listeners, welcome to Dwell On It, episode 33, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. And that said, I'm going to stop calling numbers out now because I don't want to get to a point one day of being all, welcome to episode 182. Nah, screw it. 33 is a great number. Anyone who knows me well enough knows I like the number 11 and multiples of 11. So there you go, 33. Good to go. Speaking of numbers, 2. Let's talk about the number 2. February 1st is going to be my second year anniversary for starting HRT. So that's just a little personal plug. I'm going to put it in there. Speaking of personal plugs, everyone knows that I like to, try to glam up a little bit once in a while. And so the nails that I got this time commemorate the 2-year anniversary too. So if you could see that, you can see that there's the pink, the blue, and the white, and some sparkles in there and some hearts just because of February and love and all that other good stuff. Send me a message if you'd like to know my my nail artist, right? I'll be more than happy to share their contact. Otherwise, I think this is a great time to just get right back into it. That last campaign got a lot of attention, which is fantastic. Like to see more subscribers. Always like to see more subscribers too, so if you haven't subscribed yet or followed, depending on the platform that you're on, please make sure to do that while you're here. Hit that subscribe button and also make sure to, include comments. If you want to have questions get added to the grab bag for future episodes as well, or if you'd like to participate in a future episode or whatever it may be, please make sure to let me know, right? And then we can go ahead and organize something to do, something involving you and questions that are important to you. Let's get into this episode as soon as we can so that we can get right back into the same flow that we've been used to. What are the best pieces of advice you have seen in the trans community? And what about the worst? I do know that I've answered something similar to that, but there's more to that this time. What I've seen in the past is it was something along the lines of what's the best advice I've received or whatnot. So I'm not interpreting it the same way, but this would just be more of a passive observation. And also, when it comes to the trans community, there is a diversity within the trans community itself of trans individuals. And since there's no right or wrong way to be trans, advice could be focused on certain demographics, and then advice can also be rather general. Considering the question, best is always interpreted as a relative word, and I don't want to give best advice or acknowledge best advice that has a single focus. For me, for example, if someone told me fantastic advice about saving up X amount of dollars to make sure to have all the money I need for surgeries as soon as possible, I'm not interested in any surgeries aside from an orchie that's covered for Manitoba Health. It's sound advice, but it's not best advice. So in this case, the best advice that I've ever seen in the trans community, and from a variety of mediums and platforms and whatever it would be, and even honestly coming from my own language too, self-love. Starts and ends with self-love. The entire journey is not going to be easy. Simply put, it is going to be a ride, right? And whether you consider it to be a good ride, a tough ride, whatever, it's going to be a ride, period. And there's going to be a lot of times that you're going to end up finding yourself in a place of reflection, of wondering, do you have what it takes? And the answer is yes. Yes, you do. Who doesn't have what it takes is the world around us. They're the people who don't have what it takes to learn acceptance and inclusion. That's a them thing, not a you thing. It gets overwhelming though, because it does feel stressful and oppressed and so on sometimes when you're just not ready to deal with it. Sometimes you'll look in the mirror and wonder if you're valid. Sometimes you'll wonder if what you're doing is truly the right thing. You can ask yourself all of those questions, and they're all valid questions. So the best piece of advice that I have ever seen and what I can repeat is it starts and ends with make sure that you recognize self-love. Recognize that you're doing this for you, not for anybody else. And also recognize that the values of other people are valid, but they're nowhere near as important as the values of yourself. Again, best piece of advice I've ever seen that absolutely is valid for every single trans individual out there, regardless of where they are on their path, what their path looks like, what they envision that their future is going to end up being, whatever it may be. Every single individual can hear this message and appreciate this message. The best piece of advice is self-love is a priority. Take care of yourself. Take care of appreciating yourself. Take care of ensuring that you recognize you're valid, and make sure to recognize your worth. Everything after that is just part of the ride. The worst advice I've seen is opposite in a similar sort of way. It's not self-hate. It is the promotion of exclusionary practices within the trans community of other trans individuals. Every trans individual is valid. Just because you don't see eye to eye with somebody, though, does not invalidate who they are. Just because somebody experiences their transition in a way that doesn't resonate with you, or perhaps it might make you feel like you're either getting shortchanged or that they're not taking anything seriously or whatever it would be, that has nothing to do with their validity. And that absolutely is no reason to exclude them from the values and the needs of the trans community as a whole. The worst advice that I've ever seen is suggesting that a trans individual of a certain demographic is not as valid or as meaningful or whatever as somebody else. Not listening to it. Not listening to it. That is some of the worst stuff out there. We're all fighting the same fight. In the big picture, we're all with our backs against the wall compared to so many other communities out there. And then to go ahead and then still push others aside, sorry, no thanks. Not happening. No thanks. What is the most expensive part of transitioning? Just like I was mentioning about there's a diversity of trans individuals, that is going to be a very diverse type of answer. When it comes to expensive, are we looking at immediate expenses? Are we looking at long-term expenses? I can think of things in a few different ways. Straight up, I'm not going to be able to just be like, it's this. Because to preface this, for starters, you've got like a medical transition, you've got a social transition, and a legal transition. Those all within themselves have costs depending on how you choose to go down those paths. Where do you live? What services do you want? Do you have a preference of service from certain individuals or places? That is a price in its own sense. That's kind of wide open. I've said before that when I did my name change, so we'll call that as part of the legal transition, off the top of my head, it was $200 and some odd to do a change of sex designation, an application for a new birth certificate, and a change of name, right? So all of those going together at the same time. Like I said, it came to like $200 and some odd, and that was me who just did it relatively by myself. I had a little bit of help over a phone call, but that was it. Tossed it in the mailbox, and then eventually I had a name change. It was fantastic. Other places, at least in North America, court dates need to be scheduled and such, and some individuals might require a lawyer. Those things can also possibly cost money too. There's little incidentals that come along with stuff like that. Like when I got my new passport, that was $160, but that's also good for 10 years, but that's also not really part of transitioning anyway, because anybody who needs to re-up their passport would have to do that anyway. I'm kind of rambling on that point, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. I do know in a previous video way back when I was discussing my costs of my prescriptions, and as it stands right now, the prescriptions that I take, I'm spending about $400 for every 3 months. I'm grateful that they're covered by benefits. I'm still paying into workplace benefits, but that just overlaps with other things anyway, like if I wanted to, get athletic therapy, or I think I lost my other glasses, right? But anyway, to the point, right? Like if I wanted to get that, that's all just part of the same price point as well. The prescriptions themselves, if I was to pay out of pocket $400 for every 3 months, but also knowing that I'm going to be taking these prescriptions for the rest of my life, or most of them. There's going to be one that comes off of the shopping list whenever I get that Orky done, because it's just not going to be necessary anymore. That said, that is going to be an expense until the end of my life. So that certainly adds up in terms of an expensive piece of transitioning, as I alluded to with an Orky. An Orky for me is covered under Manitoba Health, but that certainly isn't the same thing to say in other places in the world. You're paying whatever a fee would be for a surgeon and possibly a hospital stay or whatever it would be. Like, from what I understand on my end, it's a day surgery. I have nothing to think about when it comes to price point with that. On the other side, when it comes to surgeries, depending on where you live and again what's covered, top surgery, bottom surgery may or may not be covered, just again depending on where you live. Then you've got other types of surgeries, like FFS is one I can think of, especially for trans women that may think about something like that. But facial feminization surgery, that certainly is a procedure too. That is definitely not a day surgery. The surgeries is a really good example of something where that is expensive up front, depending on the surgery, and I'm presuming the majority of them, it's not like you need a routine upkeep with that too. So it is an investment up front, and then the rest is life. So I don't know if I'd answer that question as what's the most expensive part of transitioning, but I hope my answer at least kind of gave an understanding about all of the different things that come along with it. To put a cap on all of that, that is why it is so important that trans healthcare gets understood with all other forms of healthcare, whether it's things like workplace benefits, whether it's things like provincial healthcare plans or state healthcare plans, whether it's federal healthcare plans, and so on. Trans healthcare is not about just feeling better. It's also about making sure that you have you've got everything that you need so you can have a comfortable life, but also a safe life. A safe life. Many individuals will take FFS, for example, because they feel their face is too masculine. And they feel that because their face is too masculine, that they're going to be recognized more often than they would like as being a visible trans woman, just to use as perspective. Is that something that, when you piece it together about why does that have to happen? And why does that have to be the expense of the trans individual because of society's intolerance? They're paying money so that they don't get punched in the jaw. That's silly when you really think about that. For healthcare to overlook those types of things and often categorize it as something cosmetic. You can play the game and call it cosmetic if you want, but when it comes to a trans individual who is undergoing surgeries so that they can feel in tune with their body and also be welcome in society with safety, or more safety at least. That is so much more than just a cosmetic, well, I feel like dolling up a little bit this way and I feel I can lose a little bit here or there. It is not the same conversation. Personally, I'm not interested in FFS, and one of the big reasons for this is the face I fell in love with. I have never imagined needing another face. This is my face. This is me. This is who I am. And I love me, so I would never really consider anything like that. And even with that, if you want to go ahead and you want to point out masculine-ish features of my face, for example, there's also masculine-ish features of the rest of my body. I'm not taking surgery on those. And that's kind of how I am as a completionist. If I'm going to go ahead and use that reasoning on one area, I'm going to use it on all areas. But when I was talking about I'm not interested in surgeries, that's just an example why. I love me. Society having a problem with me, that's a them problem. I'm not going to go out of my way, and I'm not going to go ahead and give myself however much long bed rest and pain and suffering to go ahead and make you feel more comfortable. Sorry, not happening. Is there anything about the trans community you can't take seriously? May I reframe this? Is there anything about the trans community I can't relate with? Yes, absolutely. I'll say it tongue in cheek. I'm 40 years old. I'm pretty boring in the big picture. That there's a lot of color from different demographics in the trans community that I absolutely can't relate with. I would never, ever question the seriousness about it, for the reason is this. As I was growing up through my own life, anything that would be remotely considered to exploring myself and my gender identity was me recognizing something that made me feel happy and feel comfortable at the time. Lots of times I just wished that I could be who I was presenting myself as and just have so much less noise and chaos to have to deal with. I was embarrassed about dipping my toes in all these different areas just to try to figure out what it is that resonates with me. What is it about me that is driving me to want to explore my inner self? If that's not really serious, what can that be? I wasn't taking my life as a joke. And that said, that there's many individuals who recognize their gender identity and are so proud of it that they're more than happy to flaunt it and be flamboyant about it. To just be on the stage and say, this is me, look. And that's okay too. That's who they are. That I would never go ahead and look at what somebody does in terms of gender identity or gender expression and question if they're taking it seriously or not. As I mentioned, there's lots of things that I might not be able to relate to or connect with. Expressing yourself and what you're comfortable with as a trans individual to the peers and the networks who resonate with you so that you feel welcome, that is very serious. And I take that seriously. What did you expect of yourself or felt were total musts earlier during your transition compared to now? I really like how this flow is already going. It's building its own story for me. That's kind of fantastic. I was really stuck on the gender expectations, like the binary gender protocols, and just having this idea that voice had to sound like this and walk had to be like that and handwriting was going to be like this and looks were going to be like that and yada 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 yada. Those were things that I expected of myself, and a lot of it, kind of like I was alluding to a few moments ago when it comes to something like the surgeries, matching those expectations does as much as it possibly can to encourage and promote your own safety. The less there is that gives the representation of being a visible trans person, the less of a chance of being on the receiving end of violence. And then I realized how much work that is and how bullshit it is because it's so inauthentic to who I am as a person. There's a lot of things that I have kind of tweaked from my pre-transition self that I am much more confident with myself now, for sure. Yeah, I had expectations of myself, as I mentioned, and even when I began trans healthcare, I was adamant that I wanted to get voice training done and also laser on my face done. I wanted to get those done because if for whatever reason life made me pump the brakes on my transition, then those could be, for all intents and purposes, not reversed in a sort of way. Like, I hated shaving anyway, so I wasn't going to lose sleep over Manitoba Health covering laser facial hair removal. I wasn't going to lose sleep over that. And when it comes to voice training, it's called voice training for a reason. You can go ahead and readjust your voice as you practice and whatever. So I wanted to get those two pretty much mastered before I even dreamed about coming out, because those things were huge to me in terms of presentation. I came out super abruptly and my life path changed significantly. That all just went right out the window. Live your life. Don't live your life based on what you think other people expect of you. Live your life based on what you expect of yourself. That's how it goes. How do you cope with transphobia? How does it make you actually feel? It just happens. That's how transphobia is in my life. It is a fact that when it comes to coping with transphobia, the days that I don't experience transphobia in any way, those are the days that stand out. Simply put, transphobia is a fact of life. So when it comes to coping with it, it's there. It doesn't get to me. When it comes to how does it make me actually feel, like I said, it doesn't bother me because it really truly doesn't affect me, because all it is just a reflection of themselves. You know what? I'm going to rescind that. Let me take that back. How does transphobia actually make me feel? Makes me feel fucking great. Transphobia makes me feel great. Because if I'm living my life and my happiness so well that it drives other people to hate me that much, it drives other people that insecure to feel that they need to assert a position as my happiness has no belonging, I feel great to have that much impact on other people's lives. To be stalked regularly, harassed, defamed, dead-named, threatened, whatever. To be on the minds of other people that often, to be burnt into their minds because I'm living my best life and they don't even comprehend what a good life looks like. How does that make me feel? It makes me feel like a goddamn rock star. For people who are absolutely as insignificant as I've mentioned before about non-contributing zeros, for them to be that obsessed about taking away my happiness, how does that make me feel? It makes me feel fucking amazing to be that significant to somebody who has no comprehension of the values of people around them. And they have even less comprehension about the values of themselves. So how does transphobia make me feel? Pretty fucking great. Because I'm so much better than anything they can ever understand, and they're doing everything that they can to remove me from their visions, their imaginations, their beliefs, their thoughts, their everythings. They're doing everything they can because they don't have the ability to cope and manage their own emotions for the people around them, because they will never grasp happiness. They can only embrace fear. And because I exist and I am happy as I've ever been, they are terrified of me. And if that doesn't put me higher and higher and higher and higher and higher on a pedestal, I don't know what does. So how do I cope with transphobia? Well, like I said, transphobia exists. It will always exist until people who recognize transphobia needs them to stop it, not me. It's a fact of life. Like I said right at the top there, I pay more attention to the days when I don't experience any transphobia. Those are the rare days. Those are the days that make you go, huh, that was kind of neat, actually. Because otherwise it is what it is. And like I said, how does it make me feel? I am that relevant to other people that they do everything that they can to take my happiness away. How does that make me feel? Like I said, I'm living my best life and has nothing to do with their insecurities, their problems, their errors, their loss, and they want me to be the one penalized. How does that make me feel? I'd love to say I'd feel sorry for them, but I don't even have any patience for that anymore either. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling so special. I'm feeling so relevant. I'm feeling so important. And most importantly, I feel so proud of myself to be that much of a focal point to other people that they can't make it through their day without thinking about me. And you ask yourself now, if you were in those same shoes where somebody can't stop thinking about you and your existence, how does it make you feel? What parts about being a transgender woman are you most insecure about? Absolutely nothing about being a transgender woman am I most insecure about. That said, I can just tell you a couple things that I'm a little self-conscious about. Does that make a little more sense? Because, as I was just saying a few moments ago, I am goddamn proud of who I am. And even a few more moments ago, I love who I am. I love me. There is absolutely nothing about me that I'm fundamentally insecure about, but am I a little self-conscious about a couple things? Absolutely. I've said before that I'm self-conscious about my stomach. I'm always self-conscious about my stomach. As far as I can tell at this rate, I'm always going to be very self-conscious about my stomach. I have no good reason to be self-conscious about my stomach, but it's just something that has been part of my life, and especially more so ever since I transitioned. I've always just been a little self-conscious about my tummy. I've explained it before. I'll share a link so you can see a previous episode that gives a little bit of an explanation why about that. And then otherwise, when it comes to self-consciousness, there was one other thing. I'm going to say this in as cheeky of a way as I possibly can because I really don't feel like getting into it. I wear big shoes, and sometimes I really just don't like having to deal with it more often than, sometimes you just kind of need to be based on fashion. But hey, that's how life goes. So I'm going to wrap up. That was a fun little series of questions. It was nice to get away from the hyper serious, hyper salty last couple episodes, I guess I could say, especially considering the campaigning that I was talking about. If you haven't seen them yet, please make sure to take a look at the playlist and look at previous episodes and see some of the concerns that were coming up just about some corporate irresponsibilities. And that said, make sure to take a look in the description and make sure to click the link to go to an action page where you can add your voice to a campaign. It literally takes less than a minute. Name, email address, postal code, and what you're going to be doing by hitting send is sending a message to all the elected officials in your area, and whether that's civic, provincial, or federal, they will all get notified with the message, and that also includes the mayors of Winnipeg and Toronto. And this action page is a reminder to them so that they encourage businesses and organizations and all the corporations in their community to work as hard as they can, and perhaps even incentivize them so that they can maximize their ethical and social responsibilities to make sure that they have an upstanding CSR, and they can make sure that the 2S LGBTQIA plus community in their area is treated with respect and with a recognition that they do deserve the support and assistance that is asked of them. Please make sure to jump in there, do that. Like I said, literally takes less than a minute. Share that with your network, share that with your peers, and make sure to please share this with your networks and your peers too. Hit the share button or the forward button or follow button or subscribe button or like button or love button, or hit all the buttons for all I care. Make sure to do that. Make sure to add comments if you want to make sure to get your questions included to the grab bag too for future episodes. As I was saying at the top, if you want to get yourself included on a future episode, please make sure to let me know as well, and we can figure out how to get that arrangement done too, because it would be awesome to hear your voice in here and see what you have to say about whether it's lived experience, questions you have, perhaps some intersectionality out of all this too, could be options too. Those are all great things we can do too. I'm gonna wrap up on this. I had a lot of fun with this episode and putting it together. I hope everyone enjoyed watching or listening to it too, so thank you so much for tagging along. As I mentioned, please make sure to get other people on board when it comes to Dwhell On It, because the more people that get to hear it is the more people that get to talk about it, and the more people that talk about it, or the more people that get to share it, the more people that get to share it, or the more people that get to know about it, which then leads to everything we need about creating systemic change. So help do your part and make sure to get that noise and that visibility happening. And in the meantime, I want you to watch this again and again and again and again and again until next week. And next week we'll get right back into the grab bag. I'll put something else super fun, and hopefully that'll just be another great episode that everyone appreciates too. So have a great night, have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you later.